Okay, so we may begin. We'll have in total, we'll have three tools and methods how to work with visual objects, or also called visual representations. And the very first method, approach to teaching and learning is associations method. I will justify and explain how does it work in class, but from my everyday teaching experience, it's usually very engaging to students, and that could be used when facilitating the meetings between the eyewitness and your students. So as you see in the example on the screen, I chose the first one. The first phenomenon is the transition period from the Soviet Union to independent. Insert the country name. So, for example, it could be Belarus, could be Ukraine, could be Lithuania, or any other country, post-Soviet country. So, just to give you an example, when you draw such a hierarchical chart and you write phenomena on the top, then usually you may ask to shout out the students as well as eyewitness. What are the associations to them, to this phenomena? So it might be very different what comes to the mind of eyewitness and those who didn't live in that period, especially if students are younger. How to ask those associations? It can be anything what comes to their mind. I just single out a couple of the examples. What came to my mind is that like freedom, like hardship, or uncertainty. Regarding transition period from the Soviet Union to independent Lithuania. So to look for the further example, socialism in the Soviet Union, for my students, what it associated with and what came to their minds was the empire, Cold War, and Lenin. Very broad associations that have very little explanation what was exactly that socialism in the Soviet Union. And we'll come soon to the visual objects, how can we use them in modifying and explaining those associations. So when we first come to those initial associations, and we want to modify that knowledge of the students and ask eyewitness to contribute what they know, their experiences, here we may employ already visual objects. So to start off, once you try those initial associations, facilitators and or eyewitness, facilitators, I'm talking about you, and eyewitness, the guest speakers that you invite in your audience, may provide a collage of pictures or a video of the transition period in your country. So whether it's Georgia, whether it's Ukraine, be it Belarus, Lithuania, so it doesn't matter. So of that particular phenomena, it can be transition period, it can be a specific revolution, it can be specific event when, let's say, Soviet tanks intervened the country, and so on. So have a video or multiple pictures prepared for your audience, for your students. Having explored the visual representations, ask everyone if they would like to modify their associations based on the students' new knowledge, or maybe eyewitness have their new memories that emerged and they would like to add up on their initial associations. So what you're doing here is basically you're trying to involve everyone in a dialogue and express what do they already know and how that knowing is changing. And then, as one of the last steps, is to ask to comment on why they chose such associations. Maybe they changed them, maybe not, but they should justify it. Whereas a witness may share more of their experiences regarding the phenomena that you chose to talk about. It might be as broad as the transition period, or it can be much more specific. It can be even one day, or it can be phenomena that lasted for like a few years, not necessarily the whole transition period, which if we know when it more or less started, but no one knows when it ended because it might still continue, right? So In short, what are you doing right here? According to this method, you're basically using constructivist theory. So you're basically connecting to what students already know, because this is how we're learning. Then we introduce visual representations and trying to alter, to modify what they already know. And we eventually come to a new modified understanding. So the structure is very simple and the tool is quite easy to use. And as I mentioned for the other group, there are multiple ways of preparing those visual objects. One of the simplest, but not necessarily the easiest way, is to ask students to search immediately, but it's always better to do some homework for us and prepare a list of representative pictures. And after initial associations, once your audience make it, or eyewitness share their archival visual objects, or you as a facilitator to help students pick the best match for themselves. So those different learning styles may accommodate better their learning experiences and create new modified understanding. All right, so when searching online, it's important to note, and most of you perhaps know, to use synonyms, keywords, change the wording style, so you could find more visual objects, and I think the rest we already discussed. Yes, better to do your homework before you come to this tool, to this approach to learning and teaching. If you don't have any question, we should go on. I'll check a chat. All right, let's move. The second method, and please mind that most of them are very, similar. They are showing the ways from different angles, and you can, of course, modify them. And let's say if an eyewitness in a class comes and chooses the picture he loves from his experience that he could comment more about, and you could simply start your learning engagement with the picture. And in this case, I will restrict myself from spoiling what is in that picture, but I will ask you, what do you see in the picture? And you may also do that from the student's perspective, not necessarily telling everything as a teacher. What do you see in the picture, colleagues? What would students say? We'll go to a more challenging, more advanced methods that is called conceptual and analytical understanding. So let's use our seat belts. And we'll start from theory. And I wonder, is my screen shared all of it? You can see how I'm moving your attendance pictures. They might be bothering you, right?
No, we can only see the presentation, only
okay.
one slide.
Wonderful, because it's on top of my slide. Wonderful. So on the left side, it will be description that I will go through. On the left side, you can see just example concepts of the transition period. These are broad concepts, and I will later on justify why do we use them. And these are for, again, conceptual and analytical understanding. So facilitators, that are you or eyewitness, choose representative visual material from the relevant phenomena in the transition period of a related country. So the beginning is very similar as we did before, but either perestroika, economic hardship, national movements, Greenwich Revolution, or the Baltic Way. So depending on the topic you are studying. So then you provide a list of concepts or terms to the students, and some of these examples are on the right side on your screen, and ask them to apply one or more of them to the visual representation. It is healthy and relevant to make some association methods towards the concepts, because not all of them might be super clear to students. Let's depending on which age they are, let's say ideology, conflict, rights. So if students have those concepts and they have a clue what they mean, they might be already able to apply or shout out, I think here is resistance, I think here is it's about conflict, this one is about civil society, and so on. So as in the example in this photo, I can see the concept of resistance, let's say Velvet Revolution in Eastern Europe, where a man stands against a tank, because I can see tanks and people standing bravely in front of them. And then students may be asked to comment on why they chose one or another concept, just to justify. Now we'll take a case study together here, and we'll take a case study of glasnost and perestroika. In the first question, it's I will read the question. Which situation or moments in the visual representation illustrate the concept? And I'll choose, let's say, civil society. All right, you can see Russian translation here. So you would now insert here гражданское общество. I think I read it correctly. While we'll be watching one more video that Nora will help us, consider this one. Which situations or moments in that visual representation in a video illustrate civil society? Forgot a quotation mark. So this question is made out of isolated concept, which is civil society. The other questions include here, let's say if we use not an image, but we use a video, so have it in mind, is a stronger representation of concept because, right, so the concept, you need to insert yourself from the right side. You see a list of concepts, so you choose one and then justify because, and so on. Number third question, this image makes me think about the concept. Again, choose one concept out of the list on the right side after we watch a video, right? From your lesson, and today our lesson is about glasnost and perestroika, which is important because, right? And the fourth one is more complicated. Those prompts could be given to students. The most straightforward concept I can see here is, for example, scarcity. However, thinking deeper, I would say it also in some ways represents ideology, right? So you could insert your own concepts from right here because the command economy was inefficient. So this one is advanced, a harder one. And what I want you to do after watching this video, try together to insert concepts into those prompts and say, why do you think so? And this task can be, for some can be very easy, for some can be very challenging, but the purpose right here is to teach concepts, and I will soon justify why. So now we'll even do deeper one, which is about conceptual relationships. This is, according to Bloom's taxonomy, that we know teachers and educators is going higher. So it's for advanced level and how you can teach it. So the first question that you can see, how did reforms, first concept, impact the leadership, the second concept, of the Soviet Union and the civil society? So we have relationship of three different concepts. So, and the possible answer is in the given example on the slide. I don't know even whether better to read myself or you could read it. Here, the possible answer might be that glasnost, free speech, especially in media outlets, informed the government about the need for reforms, perestroika, whereas the civil society demanded more than the government anticipated, right? So that is already a difficult one, but learning concepts, you can push from isolated ones that we just done towards conceptual relationships. And we'll do have some practice right now. So the example prompts, the questions that you can make, you can see the following. How or why are concept and concept that you need to insert connected? So it can be civil society and reforms, right? So in a workshop, in groups, you will have to insert those concepts. I'll give more instructions in a moment. The second type of question is how, why concept impact the other concept, right? So questions are very similar, but also gives a different outcome. How do the forces of the concept and another concept interact between each other, right? You will need to choose a visual representation, recommended a video content. You don't have to I mean, it's good if you know one on YouTube, or if you don't have anything on YouTube and you don't know much how to research it, you may maybe remember a documentary that you saw in your life, maybe a movie, maybe eyewitness, maybe interview, and you'll need to formulate accordingly conceptual questions in a given example above that we just talked. So you'll need to think of what is in that content and just formulate conceptual questions. Once you do that, I will ask you to formulate your responses to your conceptual questions using that visual representation. So whether you have something found on YouTube, let's say, or you have something in your mind like a documentary that you saw in your life that everyone knows from your country, let's say, and you could talk about that in your group, think of the responses that you could provide for those conceptual questions. I want to thank you for attending, for participating, and hopefully we will meet one day again. And let's teach our younger generation about transition period and why is it important today, using the concepts as well to transfer, to understand that it is relevant to today for our civil society. And perhaps I'll say goodbye.